Why this season's calm? Camp sparked a bigger conversation than any drama. The moment people noticed how unusual the atmosphere felt this season, with campmates navigating each day in a strikingly calm and supportive rhythm that surprised long-time viewers who were used to sharp reactions and tense moments. Something shifted in the public conversation, and I think this shift deserves to be explored in depth because it reveals how expectations shape the way audiences interpret reality show dynamics. So share in the comments how you felt about this slower, warmer tone compared to past years. In my opinion, the reaction to the softer energy around the camp shows how much viewers subconsciously crave contrast, because without friction, many feel that emotional peaks flatten, yet others appreciate the stable environment that allowed personalities like Ginge, Tom and Shona to shine in more natural conversations, which raises an interesting question about what people actually want from a format built on psychological pressure. And I'm curious how you see this balance. What really stood out to me was how people described the season as the best ever, even though there was almost no scandal, meaning that humor, connection, and authentic dialogue held the show together. And this proves that audiences are willing to engage deeply when the cast generates genuine warmth instead of conflict. So I wonder if you preferred this direction or missed the traditional tough edges. Another strong moment, in my view, was the recurring praise for Ginge, whose presence clearly resonated with viewers, and the repeated comments about him making them laugh every single night indicate how a single personality can recalibrate an entire narrative, especially when the atmosphere is otherwise peaceful, and feel free to tell me which of his reactions made you laugh the most. I noticed many remarks highlighting that Tom and Shona brought additional emotional stability by engaging in calm chats in the cocky van, which created a sense of closure and reflection that older seasons rarely displayed. And this demonstrates a social shift towards valuing mindful communication rather than heated debate, which is fascinating to analyze from a viewer psychology perspective. At the same time, a segment of the audience expressed disappointment that the trial seemed too easy and didn't generate tension, which shows how some viewers anchor their enjoyment in discomfort, challenge, and intensity, and this difference in expectations often creates parallel communities reacting to the same content in entirely different ways. So I'd like to know which group you felt closer to. The discussion about everyone being too well fed is compelling because it shows how practical production choices can influence emotional perception. When hunger isn't a factor, irritability drops, arguments vanish, and the whole show transforms into a friendlier social experiment, and I think viewers weren't prepared for how drastically that would alter the tone. Many reactions raised the point that finalists seem younger and younger, which subtly changes the dynamic from experienced conflict-tested personalities to softer, more empathetic behavior. And this generational shift is worth analyzing because it influences what kind of humor, resilience, and vulnerability the audience resonates with. And I'd love to hear how you feel about this evolution. Some viewers shared a nostalgic disappointment, saying they wanted arguments, gossip, and starvation challenges, which reveals how emotional memory ties into expectation. People often compare current seasons not with what they truly were, but with how they remember feeling while watching them, which creates a psychological gap that newer casts struggle to fill. Meanwhile, others said this was their favorite season in decades, celebrating the great conversations and the supportive spirit that united the camp. And that contrast shows how a single show can become two different experiences depending on the emotional lens through which people watch it. And it would be interesting to see what kind of format you think would satisfy both sides. What touched me deeply was the comment from the person who lost her husband 11 months ago and found comfort in this season for the first time in a year, demonstrating how entertainment can become a form of emotional recovery. And this reminds us that even a light-hearted show carries social meaning far beyond humor. So feel free to share whether this season felt emotionally supportive for you as well. Ginge also sparked reactions about his background, his humor, and the way the public formed a connection with him, even if many didn't know him before, showing again how authenticity beats fame when it comes to long-term viewer attachment. And I found this to be one of the strongest lessons of the season. The comments about Ant and Dec reacting to unexpected kisses or chaotic moments show how even small gestures can become major talking points when the main narrative is calm, because any deviation pops out more strongly, reinforcing how contrast is essential in keeping audiences emotionally engaged. I also found interesting the debates around Ruby, with some people finding her funny and others perceiving her actions as attention-seeking, which reveals how polarizing humor can be and how personality-driven interpretations shape the entire reading of an episode, proving once again that comedy is social, not universal. One viewer raised an intriguing point by saying, reactions would be very different if gender roles were reversed in certain moments, which highlights how society interprets actions through layers of cultural expectation. And analyzing this helps us understand why some scenes attract strong debate while others pass quietly. The excitement around Tom's outside projects, like the mention of the Christmas markets show, shows how viewers emotionally extend beyond the camp environment and start forming ongoing attachments, meaning the audience relationships generated by the series evolve into long-term interest, an important psychological factor in fan behavior. I was also struck by the comments celebrating the cast for having no arguments and good humor, because this shows that stability itself can become a storytelling engine when personalities complement each other naturally, contributing to a collective rhythm that people enjoy watching. So let me know if you think peaceful seasons should happen more often. Meanwhile, people still expressed fatigue due to the late broadcast schedule, which is an interesting detail because emotional exhaustion changes the way viewers interpret content. When you're tired, even joyful scenes may feel overwhelming, and this shapes how engagement appears online. Some viewers missed the famous secret challenges, which usually create unexpected humor and chaos, and this absence offered a glimpse into how small structural elements of a show influence overall satisfaction, reminding us that tradition often shapes expectation more than people realize. The comment about H being voted out so he could take his sister to a Greg's adds a light-hearted, playful interpretation that reflects the friendly tone of the season. And this shows how audiences use humor to personalize narratives, something I always enjoy analyzing. Others mentioned the colorful outfits of certain contestants and how public reaction swung between admiration and shallow judgment, which exposes a deeper theme about how quickly society shifts attention from personality to appearance, often forgetting the qualities people praised earlier, and this is a valuable moment to reflect on viewer behavior. Some thought certain campmates looked withdrawn or subdued, and this reveals how audiences project their interpretations onto body language, often forming emotional conclusions without full context, which plays a major role in how reputations are shaped after the show. A few viewers highlighted the great personality connections in camp and expressed hopes that Tom and Shona keep in touch, showing how audiences enjoy imagining off-screen friendships, which is a strong indicator of how deeply viewers engage with relational dynamics. The nostalgic comments about missing the show already reveal a long-term bond with the format, proving that the series functions almost like an annual emotional ritual for many, creating a rhythm that becomes part of their lives. And this emotional continuity is essential for understanding the show's long-term success. The comparisons to classic personalities like Gino, Gordon, and Fred show how viewers naturally fantasize about spin-offs when a cast resonates strongly, and this reflects a desire to extend positive emotional experiences beyond the season itself, which is an important insight into audience retention. Others mentioned that some presenters or personalities felt too dominant, which suggests that balance in screen presence is crucial for creating a satisfying viewing experience. Because when one element overshadows others, it affects how the entire season is perceived. The debate on comedic style, especially around Ruby, highlights how generational humor plays differently for different audiences. And this diversity of opinion actually strengthens the show's cultural impact, because it keeps conversations alive long after episodes end. The reactions praising the family spirit energy suggest that many viewers place high emotional value on kindness and solidarity, reaffirming that calm seasons can succeed when authenticity replaces confrontation as the central emotional pillar. Some people said the season felt too short and ended too quickly, which reflects the paradox of enjoyable content. When emotional connection is high, time feels compressed, and this shapes both satisfaction and longing for the next edition. The mention of wishing for more kiosk Kiev moments indicates how even small side characters become cultural symbols that audiences anchor their enjoyment to, showing how layered these shows actually are in terms of viewer expectations. A notable pattern was how often Manchester was mentioned in comments celebrating Ginge and H, showing how regional pride becomes part of the emotional fabric of viewer reactions, transforming individual success into collective enthusiasm. Finally, the overall sentiment that this was a fantastic season despite the absence of drama reveals a larger truth about social dynamics. When people feel emotionally connected to a group that supports one another, the lack of conflict doesn't weaken the experience, it actually deepens it. And I'm genuinely curious if you think future seasons should keep this tone. One moment that kept returning to my mind was how many viewers said they loved being surprised by quieter emotional scenes rather than big dramatic twists, and this shows how audiences sometimes rediscover the charm of watching people simply connect without pressure, creating a natural rhythm that feels almost comforting in a world filled with constant noise. So tell me in the comments whether those gentle moments meant something for you too. Another reflection I had was about how nostalgia influences perception. Because when people say they want the old style back, what they usually miss is not the actual conflict, but the intensity of how they felt back then. And this emotional comparison is what shapes narratives online, making it fascinating to examine how collective memory interacts with current viewer expectations. I also found it meaningful how different generations interpreted the camp atmosphere, with younger viewers appreciating the calm humor and older viewers missing more confrontational energy, which demonstrates how a single format has to meet overlapping emotional needs that shift across age groups, and this raises a valuable discussion about what direction the show should take next year. One particularly striking element was how people turned tiny everyday behaviors into large symbolic moments, such as noticing when a campmate seemed more silent than usual or when someone hesitated before a conversation, proving that viewers read emotional signals intensely. And this shows how a calm season creates space for subtle dynamics to become the main source of engagement. The gratitude expressed by fans who said the show helped them through personal grief or loneliness adds a deep emotional layer, reminding us that entertainment is not just distraction but shared companionship. And this psychological aspect explains why people form such strong attachments to certain contestants who radiate warmth or stability. Another thought that stayed with me was the way humour shaped group identity this year, because every time Ginge or H shared a playful reaction or a small joke, the entire camp seemed to breathe more easily, and audiences responded with enthusiasm to this style of bonding, demonstrating how joy can be a narrative force just as strong as tension. Some reactions focused on how Ruby brought chaos in unexpected ways, and whether people appreciated it or criticized it. The fact that her presence sparked so many layered interpretations highlights how diverse personalities in a calm setting become amplified, offering viewers material for psychological observation rather than simple entertainment. It was also clear that many viewers engaged heavily with off-screen possibilities, imagining sitcom scenarios or new roles for contestants, which shows how emotional investment naturally expands beyond the show itself, turning personalities into long-term cultural reference points that continue shaping discussions long after the finale. The question of whether trials were too soft became a recurring theme, and analyzing those reactions reveals a deeper insight. People subconsciously associate physical struggle with emotional authenticity, so when contestants have less hardship, viewers sometimes feel the story becomes too smooth, even if the personalities remain compelling. Another moment that stayed with me was the way viewers celebrated compassion and respect within the camp, suggesting that audiences may be moving toward valuing emotional intelligence over shock value, and this could signal a broader cultural change in how reality formats are consumed and interpreted. I also noticed how much attention was given to regional identity, especially with Manchester being mentioned affectionately in connection with Ginge and H, showing how pride and belonging influence viewer loyalty, turning a national audience into many micro-communities united under one show. Some viewers expressed exhaustion from watching late at night, and this is more than a schedule complaint. It shapes emotional reception because fatigue affects how people judge pacing, humor, and intensity, revealing how external factors can deepen or weaken audience engagement. There was also an interesting tension between viewers who value unpredictability and those who appreciate stability, and I think this season made that divide more visible than ever by favoring harmony, which created space for personal reflection rather than adrenaline-driven reactions. The affection expressed by longtime followers who said the show has lifted them through difficult decades highlights how traditions become emotionally irreplaceable, and this explains why even small format changes trigger strong reactions, since viewers feel personally connected to the rhythm of the show across their lives. Some comments suggested that certain personalities took more attention than necessary, which opens a subtle conversation about screen time equity and how visibility shapes audience perception, demonstrating once again that balance is one of the most delicate aspects of reality-based storytelling. I was also intrigued by how quickly people form imagined friendships between contestants, wishing that they stay in touch or collaborate, because this shows how audiences project their own relational hopes onto people they admire, turning the show into a space for emotional fantasy as much as entertainment. The idea that this season felt too short reveals how emotional engagement compresses perceived time, because when viewers enjoy the energy and chemistry of a cast, episodes seem to pass faster, creating a sense of longing that fuels online discussions even after the finale. Some viewers pointed out that certain cast members appeared more serious or detached, which reminds us that personal processing styles vary widely under pressure, and audiences often respond strongly to these nuances because they read authenticity in silence as much as in humor. Another fascinating point was how discussions about clothing or appearance often overshadowed deeper qualities, showing how visual perception can dominate emotional interpretation in public spaces. And this raises an important reflection about how quickly people shift focus from personality to aesthetics. Many reactions praised the respectful communication in camp, and I think this shows that emotional stability is becoming increasingly valuable to audiences who are oversaturated with fast conflict in the digital world, making this season a refreshing contrast to the usual noise. The comments imagining future opportunities for certain contestants reflect how the show shapes public expectation for long-term success stories, turning a seasonal appearance into a springboard for new narratives that fans feel eager to follow. There was also a recurring sense of surprise that the cast managed to stay united without major tensions, signaling that viewers were not only entertained but also emotionally intrigued by the psychological cohesion that formed naturally, creating a dynamic worth studying in future formats. Some viewers expressed strong attachment to comedic interactions, suggesting that laughter within a peaceful environment feels more meaningful because it doesn't rely on conflict to land emotionally, and this demonstrates how context shapes comedic impact. The ability of this season to spark debate even without drama proves that viewer engagement relies not only on tension but also on emotional curiosity, as people enjoy understanding how different personalities approach resilience, humor, fatigue, and bonding under unusual circumstances. And in the end, the overwhelming message from most reactions was a sense of gratitude for a cast that made people feel connected, uplifted, and entertained without relying on negativity, proving once again that kindness, humor, and teamwork can hold a season together with surprising strength. And I'm genuinely interested in how you feel this emotional shift might influence next year's expectations.